Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jenna Natale, Events Manager at Long Island Business News, welcoming you to our weekly live Zoomcast of LIBN Now. Joining us today will be two Long Island-based professionals who will chat with us on the delicate balance necessary to maintain productivity and legality when inviting employees back to the office. As always, LIBN welcomes any and all questions before and during the live program. Zoom participants may submit their questions at any time by clicking Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And now, let's welcome LIBN's host, Ali Jabbour, Associate Publisher at Long Island Business News, and Joe Dowd, Editor and Associate Publisher at Long Island Business News.
Hello there, Joe.
Hi, Ali. How you
What a
holding
week.
up?
I don't know. I'm not sure. How are you holding up? It's
Pretty
been
good.
quite a week. Storms and COVID and more. I don't
Seems
know.
like it never ends, you know?
I know this year has really been so tumultuous, and certainly a perfect segue for our guests today as we, talk about, all the issues surrounding HR and returning back to the workplace in a healthy way. And while I guess, supporting each other and our feelings about returning to the office, right? Because certainly some folks are going to be tentative. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. And I'd like to welcome Avrohom Gefen from Vishnik, McGovern and Malizio, who'll be joining us, as well as Aoife O'Donnell from National EAP. And for those of you that don't know what National EAP stands for, it's the National Employee Assistance Providers. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, Ali. Hello, Joe. Hello, Aoife. Nice to be here.
Hello, everybody. Same, absolutely. Pleasure.
You guys have a tough road, right? I mean, as far as this whole HR situation.
It's been really interesting because when all this started back in March, we had all the questions were coming in about laying off employees, clients calling us up, wondering the proper way to do it. Should they do it? What the different issues are that may arise when they do it. And now it's completely shifted. How do I open up safely? How do I, in some cases, how do I even convince my employees to come back to work? So the issues are related to fears of coming back to work, safety issues, and then up until recently, at times, some of these employees were collecting unemployment that exceeded what they were being paid. Now, this is anecdotal, but many employees, including some of my clients, have told us that they have an issue getting people to come back. That may change, obviously, since it ended last week. There's been talk of increasing it or continuing it, at least partially. So dealing with that has really been almost like a 180-degree turn from how to deal with laying off employees to how to deal with bringing back employees.
Mm-hmm.
But what kinds of feelings are you absorbing from the community? When you talk as an HR professional, when you talk about the kinds of fears that people have had, I know that there's an awful lot of people who think we should never go back to work until this is resolved. As an HR professional, what's your reaction to all of that?
I'd like to jump in here. Yeah, I mean, as you know, we're an employee assistance program provider, EAP services. And so our primary job is really to be the vehicle in which employees call and say how they're feeling, right? So we definitely have our finger on the pulse as far as what the emotional landscape is on Long Island right now. So I can tell you that employees were very afraid at the beginning, right? Were very shocked. I think we all went into a bit of a crisis mode. They tried to adjust to being home. Some have done it really well. Others have been suffering terribly. And the past 2 months, we've looked at bringing people back, and the amount of anxiety that we saw balloon around this issue was significant. And so HR was reaching out to us saying, like, what do we do? And so we were doing a lot of webinars on how do you bring people back safely and well. And Ali, you asked the question, like, what do we do, right? And I think we have to start with asking our employees, how are they feeling about it? And I know a lot of great companies on Long Island have been doing that. They've been polling their employees. They've been doing voluntary returns. They've been in dialogue with their employees as to what are they comfortable doing? What are they ready to do? Because the real challenge that they're all facing right now is that, let's be honest, people are experiencing anxiety, stress, worry, grief, depression at rates that we have not seen in many years. I think we're going to, hindsight will be 2020.
I'm not so sure we want hindsight 2020. Can we change that?
I know, exactly. But I mean, we're so in the middle of it. But I will say that I think the levels are extraordinary. And I think that what we're hearing from people on Long Island, people in New York, people nationwide, we're hearing that their marriages are suffering, their family satisfaction is suffering, their workplace satisfaction is suffering. For those who thrive on being in the workplace and being connected, they're missing that. And that's big. Myself yesterday, I had a bit of an aha moment last night where I realized I am so disconnected from the business social structure that I used to operate in for so many years, where you don't realize how much it supported you or how much it made you feel like a real professional or, an independent person. And being home for so long and being isolated for so long from your business colleagues is significant.
Well,
and
you miss the camaraderie, right? The camaraderie, the whole water cooler. I haven't seen Joe since, I don't even know, March, the beginning of March, end of February.
Yeah.
And we have these meetings, but I'm always so concerned, as steering the ship here, is everyone okay? And you do feel isolated. You almost feel like you're out of control at times. Now, granted, I come to the office every day and everybody works from home. I'm keeping some sort of structure.
Yeah.
But I get it. Look, if I had 2 toddlers at home and I'm trying to work and, balance everything, it certainly, would be giving me anxiety and stress and agita.
Yep.
No doubt.
Yep. And like, there's a lot of,
Avrohom.
To echo Aoife's point, this is not just an issue when it comes to people's mental health, but it's actually an employment issue because it affects their job performance when people are under such stress or under such anxiety. So to further that, I've been encouraging my clients who are employers to have a certain amount of sensitivity and to actually judge. It's easier when it's a smaller business, obviously, but to take people on an individual basis based upon their circumstances before determining whether or not they should come back, should not come back, what sort of arrangements or accommodations. I'm not talking about people that are even in a situation where they have a health reason that they need an accommodation, which is a whole separate issue. I'm talking about people for their family circumstances or their own personal issues that they're having, encouraging employers to be sensitive and, most importantly, as Aoife was alluding to, communicating with the employees and finding out what their concerns are. And perhaps there's an easy fix. Sometimes that could be allayed by just some sort of reassurance that the employer is taking all necessary precautions if they have an issue with safety, for example, in the office. Or that I'm willing to, perhaps, if you have issues, we can accommodate you by either allowing you to continue to work remotely, even though the office is officially reopened, or maybe a sort of a split schedule where there's partial remote work and partial in-person work. And all these things are things that employers should consider, not just to be nice to their employees, but rather because that's going to affect the morale of the employees, which eventually will affect productivity.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it better. It's all tied into the ROI. It's tied into your long-term plan. At the short term, it might be a rush of like, we need the bodies back. We got to get back. We want to feel normal. I felt that myself. Like, I want everybody back. I just want things to go back to normal. But we have to accept this reality if it's not. And, when you're hearing a labor attorney promote sensitivity, times are like, tough. We're not going policy first here. We're actually going empathy. We're going sensitivity. We're going consideration. We're going flexibility. Great leaders right now are looking at all those 4 items and saying, how can we show up in that way? because it's going to get people through 2020 and into 21. And we can have a break from this madness and start resuming something that feels a lot different and better. But we have to get through it.
How does this play out legally? Okay, so in other words, we're all talking about the human aspects to this.
Right.
That employers have to be sensitive, and that's fine. But at some point, some of these people will have to go to work. And when they do, are there legal parameters that employers have to follow? And are they set? Because I mean, this whole form of law started in March. I don't know how you pulled it off, Avrohom. Okay. It's a brand new field. It's a brand new HR thing. My question is very simple. Are there legal ramifications for bringing people back either too early or against their will? How do we sort that stuff out?
The first thing all employers have to know is that they're required by the New York State regulations that have been implemented to have a plan for returning to work. There are templates that are available from the New York State Department of Health, but every company can use that to sort of tailor it to their individual circumstances. And that may depend on the size of your office, because part of the plan has to be how are you going to be socially distancing. If you have a space that's too small to allow all of the employees to be there, and it's supposed to be no more than 50% capacity for the legal capacity for that area, then you may not have a choice, and you may have to require at least some of your employees to work remotely. The other legal issues are that until now, there was always the thought that, am I required to make an accommodation for somebody, for example, that has certain health issues to allow them to work remotely? Is that a reasonable accommodation? Or can I say that that's an undue burden for an employer because you're not going to be as productive, or I think you won't be as productive if you're working from home as you would be when you're in the office. I think this has sort of taken away that defense that an employer might have to say that, no, I'm not going to allow you because that's not reasonable, because it imposes a undue burden on me, when the last few months have shown that at least many, many employees can work at home and can be at least a modicum of productive while they're working at home. So I think that's at least two ways that the legal landscape has changed. First is that they're required to have plans, they're required to implement these plans, they're allowed to do certain things that until now they weren't allowed to do, such as asking certain questions. For example, the questionnaire that everyone knows about that you have to fill out, or either online or when they come into the office, about whether they've been exposed, whether they have any symptoms, whether they have a temperature. Each day they have to do this. And until now, this would have been something that was taboo, to require employees to sort of reveal their personal health issues to their employer. But now, not only is it permitted, but it's actually required. Some of the other things that are different is actually with office spaces, required to provide PPE if employees don't have their own PPE, required to do certain spacing in the offices, and these are requirements. There are other things that are encouraged, which are not necessarily required, such as the state encourages perhaps staggered work times, staggered start times, staggered ending times, and even a rotation where maybe half the a week on, a week off, or 2 days on, 2 days off type of arrangements, which all are things that were completely anathema before all this happened.
Are there, what would the liabilities be that you foresee down the road? People come back, they get the COVID, they get really sick, they lose work time. Do you see a flood of lawsuits coming at some point?
I've been asked this question by several of my clients, and sometimes they're considering having employees sign waivers before they come back to work, which is something that, in my opinion, would not be enforceable or advisable. I think the bottom line is that as a matter of law, it's going to be extremely difficult for anybody to prove that they contracted the disease at any particular time or any particular place.
Mm-hmm.
So although there may be a slew of lawsuits, as there always are in these types of situations, I think it would be a real stretch for any of these to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And Aoife, do you see what the idea that people will be so? Do you see a movement here? That's the question, really. Do you see something that's happening that's a much broader HR question? Whether or not we need to work from home, maybe forever, maybe our lives have been altered inextricably from this pandemic, that it's never going to change. Like we've changed fundamentally.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. We have changed fundamentally and we are changing, right? Whether it's going to make us all want to work remotely forever, I doubt it. I don't see that. What I see is we have a mixed bag. You have people who are afraid to go back, and until the workplace feels safe again to them, they won't. But you also have people under major psychological distress because they're home and they feel so isolated and they're stressed with their children and they don't have a consistent school or kindergarten plan. They don't know what to do with daycare. So there is this massive, desire, I think, for people to have things just go back to normal, and would probably crave a day at the office with some friends, having a cup of coffee and feeling normal again. So I don't think we need to be worried long term. This is my, my opinion. I can't say it's not rooted in a study, but I don't think we need to be worried long term that people are forever going to, want to work remotely. I do think people will want more flexibility with their attendance in the office. If they've shown that they could do well at home, perhaps maybe they'll have some floating working remotely days, or some more looser dress, policy when they come back. We were joking earlier that no one's put on a pair of jeans in how long, and it's all, yoga pants and sneakers. And who wants to wear a pair of heels and go to, dress up to the nine? So there is going to be those challenges. I think that might be a new movement, is dress code and certainly more flexibility with attendance in the office. But we're not throwing offices away. I don't see that happening. I think we as human beings need the structure. We need the connection. There's so much being lost right now as far as onboarding new employees. They're not learning from their peers. They're not watching an older, more seasoned employee perform their job and pick up tips that you usually do when you're just around and absorbing the business. So because the power was out on Long Island yesterday, we actually had several additional staff members back in our office because they didn't have electric at home, and we haven't launched our official return into the work yet. So they were there suddenly. I have to tell you, it was a wonderful experience all day. Wonderful. The energy was up. You could, we could hear each other. You could feel each other's kind of thinking and thoughts, and there was just chat going on. And we need that. We need that social stimulation. And I think that's part of the consequence right now, is the level of disconnect and the level of reliance on technology. I think we're burning out, and the other part of what's going on right now is this, caution fatigue. So I think that's another thing to look for, is just people are tired of being afraid. We're tired of being scared of this. And so when you are bringing people back to the office, you do as leaders really need to make sure that they're still going to adhere to that level of, interpersonal safety. Because the flip side is, there is a bunch of people that are like, let me just get back to normal already. And I'm tired of this mass business and I'm not afraid anymore. So there's so much happening.
On that point, there are legal issues involved. Joe, you asked about potential liability. If there are employers that become really lax in enforcing whatever plan that they have, as far as enforcing social distancing, requiring PPE, then that could raise issues as far as liability. So it's up to employers to act as leaders in the workplace to make sure that even if you have a plan, that it's observed by all of their employees, even if there is, like you said, fatigue. Now, with regard to if things have fundamentally changed, I can say that I agree with Aoife that a lot of people want to get back to the office and are eager to get back to the office. Some things that have changed in certain fields, and I can say this from a personal perspective, is that there'll be a lot of less face-to-face meetings, for example, with clients who normally would come into the office to have a meeting. People are becoming much more comfortable with things such as Zoom, and it saves a lot of time, it makes scheduling things a lot easier than they used to be. you can schedule a Zoom meeting at 9 o'clock at night. You know, if you're an attorney and you're home and you have a client that needs to speak to you and they're working all day, so usually they'd have to take off of work to come and arrange a meeting in your office. Now instead, okay, let's have a Zoom meeting at 9 o'clock at night. They're even doing remote will signings.
A silver lining. That's a silver lining.
The state is allowing, at least up until yesterday, it may have been extended to do remote notarization. So you can do a notary over a Zoom, which has been a real lifesaver for older people that want to do their estate plan. I think there's a lot of estate planning. That's not my department, but I know that a lot of my colleagues have been doing remote estate planning with elderly people that are now concerned about doing their estate plan, but don't want to leave their house while all this is going on to come to an office that they've never been to. So it's been a blessing for those people. So things have fundamentally changed, and I think a lot of that's going to continue even after, God willing, this is all over.
Yeah.
Yes.
Aoife,
Yep.
the Zoom phenomenon is interesting to talk about from an HR perspective also.
Mm-hmm.
There may be privacy issues, but just from a personal anecdotal sense, I got together with all my high school buddies when Zoom became something we could function on, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And now every Tuesday night, we stay up till 1 o'clock Eastern, okay, talking pretty much about our high school exploits, okay? But it's a way of reconnecting with people. Do you see this as a regular thing that's going to happen now? Do you see a game changer?
Oh, I do think it's a game changer by far. By far, we had Microsoft Teams before this, but we were all in the office. We didn't use it. Now it's all day, every day. With clients who'd never done a Zoom meeting before or a Teams meeting, now they're on it. So I think it's absolutely a game changer, whether we're home or not. For businesses as well that had to put their phone system into the cloud, that changes everything in the future too. So people, again, this whole like, I'll work halftime at home and halftime in the office. The flexibility now with Zoom and with that interpersonal connection. Oh, it's flexibility. And listen, everybody's wanted that. And that's been so attractive. So now let's jump forward into 2021. You're an employer where people have worked remotely most of the time, if not all of it, for 12 months. You're going to say, come back full time now and you have to wear a corporate outfit. And, you're going to see morale, even though they want to come back, they're going to be like, an hour-long commute, in the LIE again. This is going to change things. So Zoom is phenomenal. I think Microsoft Teams technology is phenomenal. For folks, Joe, like you said, you're reconnecting with people from high school. That's amazing. That is amazing. I think there's a lot of losses in all of this too. And then there's a lot of pluses. So, if I were to share some tips on how do we continue, because I will say this, as a mental health practitioner and as an employee assistance program provider, we are seeing this summer now a real surge in calls to the EAP. And what we're also hearing from our human resources professionals. So if there's any owners out there with HR teams, just give this a thought. They're tired. They're burnt out. They have been dealing with, from March onward, a pandemic, which is a global crisis. They've had to probably make their workplace work remotely, or at least half. They've had to do that on a dime. Then human resources is facing, a civil rights outcry and, social justice reform and all the dialogue that comes with that. And then if we look forward to November, we have an election coming up. We have a country that is divided. We have people who feel divided, families. All these issues are piling and piling and piling and piling. And often businesses look to HR and say, fix it, or do something about it, or take care of us. And it's a huge task. So I feel like my tip for today would be, we need the executive teams, we need the leadership teams and HR and the owners to all be working together to say, how do we take care of us, our leadership, our employees? How do we get through this together with sensible policy, with sensible law following, right? And nod to, of course, employment law, but then also some deeply wrapped humanity strategies and that ability to have those one-on-one talks with people and treat people individually, not as an entire group, And I think that's how you're going to end up in 2021 with higher morale, higher productivity, higher retention rates, and where you have a team that can say, we did it, we survived, we survived, and maybe we even thrived. Right? Maybe we even thrived. So that's, it's a tough recipe right now for people, but I think that's the way they need to go. because this is the in-between. I feel like, we had our crisis, the adrenaline spikes, everybody's talking about it, everybody's doing everything. Now we're in this phase of adjustment where we have adjusted, right? Like Ali, you're at the office, you're like, I do this now, this is our new life, but there is no answers. So we're all battling this uncertainty now. So that's where there's more fatigue and depression and anxiety and stress and worry of like, when does life feel better again? When can we get a better normal? I'm not going to say a new normal because we're already in one, a better normal. So this is the tough stuff.
In the last minute that we have, just want to ask one final question to both of you.
Sure.
How has COVID-19 and the pandemic changed you personally? Avrohom?
Well, at first, when I was working from home, it was a real challenge. I have 4 children, all of them taking Zoom classes. So it was challenging. It took a while to adjust until I fit into a schedule and sort of worked out with my wife, who's also working full time, how we were going to do it. But at a certain point, I was eager to get back to the office, like we said. From a personal perspective, it's been difficult. I have parents that are older. My father hasn't left his house since the middle of March, and we're still doing backyard on the deck, sitting there and talking with him as opposed to giving hugs and kisses like we're used to. So it's been an adjustment, and I think, like Aoife said, if we all knew what the end date was, it would be a lot easier. But not knowing that and hearing conflicting reports, there's going to be a vaccine on this date, there'll never be a vaccine, all makes it very anxiety-ridden. But I think that we all come out as stronger people because we realize the value of human connection, and we're actually trying to connect in ways that we haven't done previously.
Aoife?
Beautiful. Professionally, it has changed my mindset regarding how we operate our business and the need to be in the office. I will now be an employer who's far more flexible as far as, let's rotate who's in the office. I want them in the office because of collaboration and connection and energy, but I also think there's value to having remote work days, working on projects, moving your assignments to that. We changed all our technology so that we can work wherever now. So I'm much more open-minded now professionally about that. Personally, it certainly had its impact as well. Same thing, older parents. I can't travel to Europe. I have siblings in Europe. Haven't seen them, probably won't see them for over a year. So that's a huge loss to me. So it's managing, I am no different than anybody else. It's managing the mental strain and the wear and tear of providing mental health support for our people, and yet saying, okay, how are my team doing? How am I doing? And going back to gratitude, going back to resiliency and self-care, and just getting through it just like everybody else. So
that was terrific. And a truly great webinar today. Aoife O'Donnell, Avrohom Gefen, thank you so much for being part of it. On behalf of Ali Jabbour and everyone here at Long Island Business News, thank you for watching. Stay safe and good luck.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for attending this week's episode of LIBN Now. Don't forget to join us next week for episode 14 of LIBN Now. To see past episodes or to submit your question ahead of time, go to libn.com/libnow. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week.